Okay, we are moving on. Eric, thank you very much for doing the panel discussion on cybersecurity, cyber hype over help. We want to move on right now. We're going to talk about cybersecurity and an integrated approach. And to do that, I'm happy to be joined by the CEO of RUAG Defense, Dr. Markus Zoller. Dr. Zoller, the floor is yours. There you go.
Hello. IT is dominating our private and life and our operations. IT is everywhere. IT is mobile. IT is always on, 24/7. 1.2 zettabytes of data have been accumulated in the past 30 years. The expectation is that 1.4 zettabytes of data will only be accumulated in 2017. IT dominates our private life, smart living, smart cities. In energy today, we have 244 billion of devices connected with a smart grid. Cars will be in e-mobility meshed network hubs. And in energy, we will have, or in cars, we will have 150 million cars globally connected to the internet in 2020. We're talking about connectivity, intelligent traffic management system, and we're going to go in finance. It's approximately 100 billion of transactions, non-cash transactions, which were executed in the European Union in 2013 via the internet. And in medicine, we're talking telemedicine. We have heard about the Google Bracelet, and it's a terabyte of data which is required to save and store the genome data of a human being. So you see, in privacy, but also in business life, IT and IT security, cybersecurity is a key subject. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome from my side that you join my presentation. I represent the company RUAG. RUAG is a Swiss technology group being active approximately 1/3 in Switzerland. 2/3 of our business is internationally. We're fully owned by the Swiss state. However, operationally and strategically, we're independent and run as a normal company. Employ approximately 8,000 people and 2 billion of annual turnover. Or a solution partner, a system partner, product partner, and a maintenance partner in aerospace and defense, active in 5 divisions: RUAG Space, RUAG Aviation, RUAG Aerostructures, RUAG Defense, and RUAG Amotech. And RUAG Defense is the center of competence for cybersecurity within the RUAG Group, because cybersecurity impacts all of our businesses, but we run cybersecurity also as one of our key businesses. And we have been a trusted partner of the Swiss Army in the past 10 years as a solution provider and a consultant in cyber. We have a role of a strategic partner to armed forces, to security and rescue organizations, to security associations, and to civilian operators of critical ICT infrastructure in cybersecurity. And our activities go from cybersecurity concepts and doctrines via the implementation of homeland security and military ICT system by taking all aspects of security and cybersecurity under consideration, cyber stress tests, cyber training, and the portfolio in the range of forensic situational awareness, of network data traffic management, and in decision support. That's the role we're taking. You see, we're coming, and our backbone is defense and homeland security. And in these areas, cyber is the 5th dimension of conflict and threat. First dimension is conflicts on land, second on water, third on air, fourth in space, and now the fifth dimension in cybersecurity. And let me take a very simple example. In our world, when you have a tank is a cannon on wheels. As an effector, its main purpose is to engage the enemy. But in today's world, a tank is far more. It's a sensor as well, integrated in a complex communication network. And even in an ad hoc communication network, it's a network hub. So the value of a tank has substantially increased to a combination of an effector, a sensor, and a hub. And it's not only anymore a cannon on wheels, it's an IT system, a mobile one on wheels with a cannon. So that are the changes which are taking place in the military world. And when we look now into the civilian world, and especially into the area of critical ICT infrastructure, then we have, in fact, these principles which apply to military in times of peace. So a critical ICT system today is vulnerable. It's opposed permanently to cyber threats, to cyber attack. It needs protection, and it needs cyber defense. So that's the paradigm shift, that in civilian world, we have the same principles today in cyber as we had in the military world in a classical consideration. Now, in these fields, it would be extremely dangerous to believe that the threat is known. In classical world, a threat was known, and we could react over the years. In cyber, threats are permanently changing. The situation is unclear. There's always new intelligent bombs we're confronted with, and our vulnerability increases step by step. And that requires protection concepts and defense concepts, both in civilian world as in the military world. And the principles, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, are quite similar as in classical conflicts. But there are 4 peculiarities which are special. First peculiarity, which needs special consideration, that's timely convergence. So there's an immediacy that cause and effect lie extremely close together. So for example, when Egypt in 2011 disconnected from the internet as part of the Arabic Spring, that had an immediate impact on the economy in the country and on industry in the country. There's concurrency, so the internet in fact brings information and effect extremely close together. That's also the reason why we can globalize processes. And there's even a disproportionality that a time lag in the internet and the distance don't correlate with each other. So latency is not given. And we know that the email can be lost somewhere in the system and it appears 2 or 3 days later. Or you can have a situation that you communicate from 2 servers in a distance of 2 kilometers, but the information first goes around the world. Then secondly, there's a geographical convergence. So the cyber bridges the long distances, which makes attribution far more difficult. So it can be attacked from a computer in Germany, but it can be that this computer had already been captured some time ago from a hacker in China. The virtual location and the real location do not necessarily correlate with each other anymore in the cyber world. So when I communicate from Western Canada to Eastern Canada, this connection might go via the United States with all the consequences. And also side effects are extremely difficult to predict. So for example, when it was discussed some years back to attack the Iraqi banks via cyber attack, This was not done because nobody could, at that time, predict what impact it can have on banks in Europe. Then fourth peculiarity is the organizational dependence. We have organizations which were separated in the past who work today on the same platform. So military, private, and industry use the net, and there's direct and indirect dependency which come up. Formerly, isolated systems having interfaces in these times to other systems. When we talk about remote monitoring, for example, of a power station via the internet, then we have a connection. And organizations with completely different security requirements are coming together and have to find a way forward. We're talking about the Internet of Things, where each fridge and oven and so on is connected to the Internet. It's exactly the same. A new service model, as we understand it today in banking, have, as a consequence, a significantly increased vulnerability. And then the fourth peculiarity is the extreme asymmetry, which we observe. An asymmetry on the one hand in between cost and effect. So for example, a very cheap virus can cause a very high damage. But there's also an asymmetry in between physical effort, which needs to be undertaken, and the effect. So when you take, for example, Stuxnet, which was discovered in 2010, which was a virus to infect the programmable logical computers for the automation industry. This one was designed with a small physical effort to finally infect approximately 60% of the computers in Iran. And then also as a part of this extreme asymmetry is an on-off characterization of a threat and of an impact. When in a classical threats, the threat situation evolves slowly. In the internet, that can happen on-off immediately. So when there is a denial of service attack, then I have the impact immediately, and the location can be from 1 second to the other, disconnected from my network. So these four peculiarities, in combination with the classical principles of conflicts and defense, have to be taken into consideration. They result in a permanent increasing vulnerability, in a permanent unclear situation, and having the whole center, the whole issue in the center of society. Now there is a need for answers to that, and holistic concepts are required to address the cyber threat and the cyber security. First of all, it's cyber strategies, concepts, and doctrines. Concepts and doctrines for different levels of readiness. So for example, during normal operation, key elements or keeping security level in case of migrations. It's protection of critical infrastructure, it's incident response in special cases. When the alert level rises, all that has to be adapted to the specific needs and the specific situation. And as soon as I get attacked, then I have to align cyber dimension with my mission targets, that's the military world, or when I look into it as a private company, I have to combine the cyber threat in line with my business purpose and the impact on my business. I have to decide what I have to protect. In military world, I have to ask myself, is that what I protect, just the tank when I take the analogy from before, or is it a mobile hub on a tank? And in civilian work, I have to decide, is it acceptable that this location could, by a denial of service, connected from my network? Then it needs cyber doctrines or when we talk in the civilian world, it's crisis management and emergency management concepts. There's different elements of these doctrines of crisis and emergency management. First of all, I have to define clear roles and responsibilities. So who is responsible for what? What needs to be done? What interfaces needs to be considered? Who needs to be informed about what? And how do I get these processes trained? Then it's about protection concepts in the doctrines. For example, questions, do I decouple or couple systems? So operational technology usually in the past have been decoupled. Today it's coupled because the usage of operational technology really gets established when I can use modern IT. But I have to get a clear understanding on how I play this decoupling and coupling together, also again for different situations. But there is also a clear need in how I'm working together in between different bodies. So for example, when a company gets attacked, what role is the state taking, what is industry taking, and how can I combine that together? For example, in Switzerland, there's a public-private partnership which is called Cybersecurity Experts, which is a basis where when a company gets attacked, they get support from other industries and from the state to resolve such situations. Then certainly what needs to be considered in cybersecurity doctrine as well is the usage of situational awareness, to becoming aware what's happening in the internet, looking in the internet on a permanent basis and taking conclusions out of that. And let's take, for example, the Swiss banks when they blocked the accounts of WikiLeaks some year ago. They could have predicted that they get cyber attacked then also afterwards. So cyber intelligence there is a key element of the doctrine as well. There was also an element of a doctrine or a crisis management and emergency concept is the business continuity planning. So what am I going to do if it happens? To have emergency procedures in place and really to train these emergency procedures. That's something which is not really done today. For airlines, this is standard procedure. They have to train what they are going to do if a plane crashes and how they are handling such a situation. Exactly the same we have to do in the cyber world as well. And then a further element in the cyber doctrine is certainly the balancing in between reactive, proactive, and active cyber defense in combination with situational awareness. And there it's certainly key to increase situational awareness and to reduce the defense element out of it. So that's one element. Could talk far more about that, but that are elements of cyber concepts and doctrines which need to be defined. Secondly, in the cyber world, that's not something which we can look at anymore completely individually. It's, in fact, a joint approach in between different instances. So different instances like the military, like the private industry, like the authorities, and even individuals. And the approaches of working together in the cyber world is completely different from nation to nation. But what's common, there's 4 different elements which are key. One element is information exchange with respect to cybersecurity. A second element is definition of standards, rules on how I protect against cyber attacks. It's joint support, supporting each other if something happens. And then the 4th element is also a joint defense. Perhaps in redundancy, when Georgia some years back was attacked, they asked Estonia to take over the operation of their critical ICT infrastructures. So that are redundancies across borders. But certainly in these alliances, cybersecurity alliances, there's also challenges. One challenge certainly is the trust level, that the different parties and organizations trust each other. There's different doctrines which would have to be harmonized, and there is even different legal frameworks which apply. And to get that all under one common denominator is certainly not an easy thing. Then the third element, or cybersecurity solutions, or in a very simple terms, I talk about the toolbox. And the toolbox, interesting in cybersecurity, is quite similar than in normal threat situation. We're talking about protection, so protecting our ICT infrastructure. We're talking about sensors, so that means getting situational awareness, simulating what happens in the cyberspace, and taking decisions on that. And we're talking about effectors, defending ourselves against cyber attacks with perhaps even cyber weapons. I'm aware that the later one is a very sensitive subject, but when we look at the global world, then officially and unofficially, even the third dimension is a subject. And this is the toolbox, on the one hand, which is quite common sense for the military world, also in classical defense, protection, sensor, effector, and it one-to-one applies in military and civilian in cybersecurity. Then the fourth dimension, which we need to address in a holistic cyber defense setup, are the adequate technologies and processes. With respect to the technologies, it's important that they are rocket science, simple, no fancy stuff, but robust. It's a balance in between standard solutions, which are used for basis protection, but on the other hand, tailor-made solution, which we use for all what goes beyond. But then it needs also the respective processes. And processes not only on the level of the IT operators or of the CIO, but also processes which go through the whole organization. And certainly at the end, I as a CEO have to decide what am I going to do if my network is going to be attacked. And there needs to be processes established that this is happening. And then the fifth element, which is key in a whole setup, that are the cybersecurity skills, the people who understand cybersecurity. And that includes cybersecurity training, strategically on the one hand, how do I act in different situations, but also operationally. And that in real exercises, skilled training procedures, etc. And not only for the IT people, but also the lawyers have to understand cybersecurity, the financial guys have to understand cybersecurity, but also the top management, because it goes through all levels, and that needs to be trained. When we look here on the military side, that's their normal practice. You train from the lowest level up to the general. In the business world, we're not that skilled with that, but I'm convinced that in the field of cybersecurity, that will come. But what it also needs for specific situation with respect to the cyber competence, specific organization for special purposes. I already mentioned public-private partnership. For example, in Switzerland, we have a public-private partnership which is called Melanie. That's a reporting and analysis organization where cyber issues can be reported, will be analyzed, and it's supported by the state. That's member from industry, but also member from the military side. And that are the special purpose vehicles which are necessary. And what it needs as well is cyber training ranges where the strategic and tactical training really can be executed. And the sixth element in the whole framework is also the political and juridical legitimation. And this is a field where quite a lot is still open. What is the juridical basis for cyber intelligence? What am I allowed to see in the web? How can I defend? What about counterattacks? And for these elements, a juridical framework needs to be established. You see, these are 6 areas in a holistic approach towards cybersecurity. And certainly the challenge will be to find a good balance, on the one hand, of investment and effort we're doing in cyber protection, but on the other hand, also on the optimal solution. And it's finally also in this area, as where we were, a balance in between cost and effect. And that's the challenge we need to address. Now, to conclude my speech, I would like to give you a short interview in what RUAG is doing. And I have mentioned we're a partner to military forces, to rescue and security organizations, to security associations, and to civilian operators of critical ICT infrastructures. And our role, we focus very much in the field of cybersecurity because we cannot do everything. And we have 3 pillars. The first pillar is protection, where we want to protect our customer by telling them how they can protect themselves. And here we're in the area of cybersecurity strategies, concept doctrines, where we really support them working such doctrines out. And then we even go up to the level of security architectures, up to the recommendation what security components can be built in an IT system. We're not building the IT system, but we do the recommendation. And perhaps just 2 examples to mention what we're doing. For example, we have had a key role in the security design of the Swiss mission data system of the Swiss Air Force. That's a top secret mission data management system where the whole mission planning is done for an Air Force mission, where in the central core then all is taken together, and finally the mission data goes into the cockpit of the airplane and for supporting the mission until it's done. That's a solution which goes beyond different systems, different zones, spread data in different locations stored. And there the key element was to come up with a holistic protection and security system that it fulfills the requirements of top secret. Or another application, each radar communication reconnaissance intelligence system, which is built and integrated by the Swiss Army, has a so-called information protection and data protection concept, where on a risk-based approach, there is a consideration what security risks are possible, how can I protect these risks, and in these concepts, all the data security elements are addressed, and that's a role RUAG is taking as well for our customers. Up to now, we have generated approximately 100 of such concepts. Then secondly, we're a validator, and we're helping our customers to become a cyber learning organization. And this has 2 elements. One element is cyber simulation, where we do, on the one hand, attack simulation on running systems to see what's happening, to analyze and come up then with recommendation on how can the system be improved. But we're also modulating certain systems in a workbench approach, in a testing setup, and or stress testing systems against specific cyber attacks. For example, we're doing that for signals intelligence systems currently for the Swiss Army. And all these lessons learned and considerations were taking into consideration in a complete offering of training solutions with the spirit, as I have mentioned it before, from strategic training to operational training, from the top management to the ICT expert. And also one example there, we had a clear role in NATO exercises, cyber exercises, in 2012, where we had a key role in designing the exercise and also then in analyzing the results. And the third pillar is situational awareness, where we have a product portfolio and with a workbench of different tools which help to get cyber situational awareness. On the one hand, that's a traffic monitor which analyzes IP traffic or SCADA traffic, identifies out of terabytes of data suspicious behavioral patterns, and submits that then to the operator to take decisions. And the nice thing with that is we can do that without looking into the data itself, so privacy is always given. And this is combined in a closed loop with decision support tools. We talk here about the RUAG traffic visualizer, which visualizes the cyber situation in an intuitive way, shows trends, and gives decision support to the operators, or even in an automated way to take the right decisions and to act, and to apply specific logics. That's the role we are taking as RUAG. And let me conclude. IT is everywhere. Cybersecurity is a key subject 24/7. In this threat situation, the threat is always changing. Vulnerability increases, permanent unclear situation. So classical aspects of cyber defense apply, but with peculiarities like timely convergence, geographical convergence, organizational dependency, and extreme asymmetry. And finally, it needs a holistic approach, which is flexible, sustainable, from strategies up to solutions, training, and even the heuristical framework. And here we were in a dynamic process, and I'm representing a defense company. This is daily life, and it's a daily life of cybersecurity we have also in the civilian world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance.